Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Today we have Ms. Tina Cannon and Ms. Natalie Lynch on our call for our What is Entrepreneurship? The Benefits and versus Challenges of Running Your Own Business. My name is Natalie Obregon. I'm one of the Career and Education Outreach Specialists with Workforce Solutions Capital Area. I'm so excited that the day has come and that we have these amazing panelists and entrepreneurs that are excited to also share the information that they've gathered across the years with their businesses and so forth. So if you're joining us today, just letting you know, this video will be up on YouTube after today. So we're recording this so we can keep this great resource for anyone, every student, any job seeker to use going forward. And so we're going to get started. Without further ado, let's start with question number 1 from Ms. Tina, and then we'll get on to Ms. Natalie. So the first question that we had for you today is just, Tina, give us a little bit of background knowledge of your education and your job experience, so what led you to where you are today.
Sure. Thanks to Workforce Solutions for putting this together and working with the sister chambers in Austin. We really appreciate the collaboration. So education is the key word in that question or statement. It is the defining feature for most entrepreneurs, is whether that's a formal education, a 4-year degree, a graduate degree, or it's a vocational type of training. Whatever it is that you're going to do in life, you've got to be good at it. And you need to be able to have that educational track. I'm a little bit about, quick version of me is I'm first generation American, and going to college was probably the best personal investment that my family could have ever made for me, because it does open the doors. Whether or not you choose to walk through them and continue that path is really up to each individual, but it does at least open the doors and allow you to have those conversations in your career as you develop. I'm also, besides being the CEO of the Austin LGBT Chamber, I got there because of my past business experience. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had 5 different startups along the way, including an angel fund at the end of that run. And so we'll talk more about kind of the individual pros and cons and attributes of an entrepreneur. But most of them, I think, have that one same gene, in that we want to solve a problem. There's a problem and a solution, kind of unsaid contract that creates entrepreneurs. But we'll get to that. But I used to be a startup founder. My most prevalent startup was PetsMD. We were the WebMD for pets back in the early 2000s, before really startups were a thing. I was one of very few female entrepreneurs in the city in which I live. You literally could count the female entrepreneurs that were funded on one hand back then. We would attend South by Southwest and we'd be like some of the only females there. There's no line for the restroom. That has changed a bit, but there's still more work to be done. And then the other side of what I do is the public policy side, having run for office a couple of times. And as a true entrepreneur, it's although I didn't win, it's still a badge of honor to say that you did it. But the intersection of business and public policy is what landed me at the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Turn it over back to you.
Thank you so much, Tina, for that response. That's really great information to know where you came from and how you got started and where you are today. So Natalie, now we're going to pass the baton on to you. Can you also speak a little bit about your background and your job experience? So how you ended up with Lynch Law Firm?
Sure. So my name's...
I'm sorry. Natalie, sorry, really quickly. Unmuted. Can you go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yep, sorry. So I'm Natalie Lynch. I'm the Lynch and the Lynch Law Firm. I grew up in Texas, went to St. Ed's for a little bit. My grades went up and scholarships went down, so I had to transfer over to A&M, and then eventually graduated from South Texas College of Law in their evening program. So I had a 50-hour-a-week job and went to law school at night, which I cannot recommend to anyone. But it was important, and I needed to do that. And to Tina's point about education and opening doors, I think it's important to take your education where you can get it. So a big part of my education was, going to school at night. There were a lot of things I didn't have access to in law school because I went to the night program. I didn't get to do an internship or a clerkship. I think they were available, but they just weren't practical if I needed to earn an income. But some of the other ways that I found education, whether I liked it or not, were just through the life experiences that I had. I was working as a buyer at a death care consolidator. And so I got purchasing experience. And I cannot tell you how many times I have fallen back on my purchasing experience. I'm actually doing an investigation right now that relates to a purchasing department. Again, it's come up all the time. But one of the a little bit more, I guess, darker parts of my education, while I was in law school, the place that I worked, I was beyond toxic, but I was actually sexually assaulted by my supervisor. And the first job I got out of law school was doing workplace investigations for an organization in Colorado. And you know what? I was really good at it because I got it. I had this experience, and I was able to help organizations understand why victims kind of sound crazy sometimes. But it just made me really good at what I was doing. And so I think, again, to Tina's point about education, yeah, go get those letters after your name, but don't limit your educational scope to what an institution or an organization or a university will give you. Get that education where you can. Get it through life, get it through internships, get it through jobs, get it through weird classes that you want to take just because you're curious, get it through classes that you want to have the class because you never want to have to do that thing for your real life. Get your education wherever you can, but just go get it.
That was very powerful. Thank you, Natalie, for that, because it's true. You are the epitome of what a hustler looks like. You did it however you could. So thank you. That's really insightful. Awesome, ladies. Let's get on to that next question we got for you. So after knowing now a little bit of your background, let's kind of talk about how it relates to a business owner. So that entrepreneur spirit, what has been the greatest fear, Tina, that you've encountered? And how have you learned to manage fear?
Yeah. If you don't manage fear as an entrepreneur, you almost it's almost the juice that keeps you going. Having had 5 different startups, I think the biggest fear is just doing, right? Is taking that first step, either to step out on your own from your cushy job where you've got your desk and you've got your stuff and you get a little paycheck and it's great, and you know what's coming every 2 weeks. To be able to just take that first leap to believe in yourself that you can do this. So for me, it was that fear of letting go of the 2-week paycheck. And I would urge anybody who's out there thinking of being and starting their own business, stay at your current job until they fire you. Do not make the leap until they push you out the door, and use that as kind of your first funding and financing portion of your startup. But then I think it starts to grow as an entrepreneur. You have those fears every day of, okay, I'm ready to hire an individual. That means I'm personally responsible now for somebody else's paycheck that I used to be dependent on as an employee. And so there's that fear of, can you make payroll every week, every 2 weeks? What do you need to do with your personal finances to make sure that your staff is paid? And most entrepreneurs will pay their staff before they pay themselves, because you need them to run your business with you, and they're with you. They're your people, they're your family. And so there's always kind of this misnomer in the community that business people, whether it be small, mid, or large size people, have like this untold amount of money. Most business owners don't make money themselves easily within the first year. Don't make a dime, and are instead paying the staff and making sure the staff is paid. So those are the financial fears when you first start out are huge. And then as you get going and as your business starts to evolve, you realize, I used to teach classes on entrepreneurship, and I would say to my class, I'm like, you're not a real business until you're important enough to be sued. And that's when the next fear comes in, because at some point you will get sued, right? When somebody cares enough about you to hire an attorney to sue you for something, right? That's when the second fear factor sets in, because now you're real and everything's at risk. But that's usually my preface in that class, to talk about, make sure that you've got all your P's and Q's set up as an entrepreneur out of the gate, and assume prepare for those things in advance. Have your partnership agreements, have your business entity set up correctly, have all your insurance set up correctly. All those things that are like adulting in business, you need to do. Most business owners or entrepreneurs are really good at their craft, right? Maybe I'm the best cupcake maker you've ever seen in your life, but the cupcake maker is not going to focus in on all those things that I just said, right? He's not going to make sure he's got insurance, not going to make sure he's got all the legal documents set up and all those protections. That adulting side of the business can actually stop a lot of people from being truly successful. Either they're fearful to go out and do it because they don't know, or they find out the hard way that they should have had it all set up in the beginning. But I don't think you ever manage fear. I think you kind of prepare and plan for the inevitable, because as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you're going to wear so many different hats, from making the cupcakes to now looking for managed care products for your staff, things that you didn't expect to do as an entrepreneur. You just thought you were going to make the best cupcakes in the world.
That's really great insight. I think that, like, coming from, the world of nonprofit, that's kind of what I thought of. It's like you're always wearing the hats of so many different roles, and you just got to roll with the punches. I mean, that's what it sounds like. That's really good insight to know. Also that, managing fear, right? Like, that just seems like such a huge deal, but it's like you just have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, it seems like. So thank you. Natalie, we're passing it on to you. How would you say that you've encountered, their greatest fear? What is it? And do you also agree that you don't manage it? You just kind of prepare for the best, or prepare for the worst?
I don't think I ever said you just manage it. I think I put different labels on it. But I think actually putting a label on it is part of what helped me manage it. So I label it imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the thing that gets me. And I know especially in the legal world, but in any of the professional services type organizations, and I'm sure most others as well, imposter syndrome is real, and it's just the concept that, oh my God, what if somebody finds out I have no idea what I'm doing? And the truth of the matter is you probably know what you're doing, or else you wouldn't have gotten as far as you did. But the way, just to use Tina's language, the way I guess I manage my imposter syndrome is that I refuse to stop learning, which kind of goes back to the first question. I refuse to stop expanding my wheelhouse. I refuse to stop expanding who I am and what I do. I will, however, give myself grace to say, this season of my life, I'm not going to learn any new tricks. And so maybe, there's been times when my business is experiencing gigantic growth, and I just am having a hard time keeping up. And I've said this quarter, I'm just not going to learn any new tricks. Or, I had some health issues. I just gave myself the grace to say, you know what, I'm giving myself 4 months and I'm not going to learn any new tricks. But at the end of 4 months, I gotta start engaging with my imposter syndrome again. The other thing that I will do, and I don't think it's a grace thing, I think Tina will probably talk about this a little bit later, but I've strategically declined to expand myself in certain ways. So I don't do family law. I don't do personal injury law. I don't litigate at all. Those are strategic business decisions that I've made, and I have to stick to those. But aside from that, managing my imposter syndrome by saying, I will continue taking cases that make me nervous. I'm not going to tell the client that, but I will continue to take cases that make me a little bit nervous, or that touch on a thing that I haven't, seen before, but I will not ever do more than give myself grace to stop or pause for a little bit on my learning. One other real quick thing on this topic, that because I see a lot of people who are starting new businesses, I often end up telling people, you are going to be scared every single day of the first year of your entrepreneurship. Every single day of that first year, you're going to be terrified. And at some point, you're going to realize, wait, I'm in the 14th month and I've seen this before, and it still doesn't make me comfortable, but I'm not scared of it anymore. I'm, appropriately nervous about it. But that first year, everything is coming at you. Everything is new. Everything is different. The challenges are different for a year. And then, there'll always be challenges, but they won't be constant the way they are in your first year. If you make it through your first year, and you can still breathe, you're probably going to make it to your second year.
I think that instills hope for anyone out there that wants to start their business. So thank you so much. Great. Because yeah, it's been a tough year for anyone involved, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, awesome. Let's get to that third question. We are about 25 minutes in, and Natalie, I'm gonna actually let you answer this one first so we can kind of take off here. So what has been the biggest factor or the first step that you took in beginning your business, your law firm, and what that has helped you be successful? First thing you remember.
One of the things that I know about myself that has helped me move along is that I'm tenacious and I'm pretty resilient. I mean, if you get knocked down and you stay down, entrepreneurship isn't maybe for you, which is totally fine. We're a crazy bunch of people, but tenacity and resiliency are real important characteristics, and I think you can embrace them and you can accentuate them, but if you're not born with it, you're not born with it. And again, that's okay. But you got to have those things. And then I think one of the other things that again, I have this perspective of seeing other new companies thrive or die in their first couple of years just because of what I do, as well as looking back on my own experience and understanding that I need to be the stupidest person in the room has been a big one. There's one person on my team younger than me, and everybody else on my team is older than me because I need their experience. I was never foolish enough to think that I could do my own accounting. I did my own legal books, because that is my wheelhouse. But I was never foolish enough to think that I could do my own accounting. I mean, go get a professional. Even if you're the one doing the data entry at the end of it, let a professional set it up for you. Banks laugh at companies that hand them LegalZoom entity documents. I mean, you've got to get your professionals in there. I know it's money, but if you're not willing to invest in yourself by letting professionals invest in you, you might just hold off until you're in a different place where you are better able to invest in yourself, whatever that means. But again, surrounding myself with professionals both on my team and external to my team, doing the accounting, doing the insurance, doing the marketing, but then internally, I have an HR professional. I didn't just go get an HR professional. I got one of the best. And so just knowing that I could always fall back on all these other smart people in the room with me was a real big part of me making it.
So you didn't feel like it was you alone, basically, what you're saying?
At the end of the day, I always knew I was alone with the risk, but it happened so rarely that we got to dangerous positions because there were so many smart people thinking about my problems.
Yeah, I second all of that for sure. And as an entrepreneur, those are big bills, right?
Yeah.
When and you're looking at going, man, I gotta come up with that scratch that I didn't plan for. But to Natalie's point, like you have to do it at the beginning. You have to, and that's a great way to phrase it, is to invest in yourself. I think for me, the biggest step that because my world was the startup world, is for us, we had to decide what our exit strategy was as we began the company. We had to determine, is this a long haul? Are we going to make cupcakes forever? And that's the deal. And if you know what your exit is, then you know how to build the house, right? You know what it looks like, and you start building your plan accordingly. If your exit strategy is to be acquired, then you need to know what it takes to build that valuation up quickly in your company, and that changes your trajectory of your strategic plan. Like, so it sounds odd to tell an entrepreneur, hey, congrats, you just started your company. How are you going to get out of it? Right. But you need to be thinking it's like asking somebody to build you a house and then not telling them what you want it to look like. You have to know what the end game is to help you build your plan in between. I think is super important. And there were, for us, as startup entrepreneurs back in the day, it was always, build it, get the valuation up, sell it, build it, do the next one, do the next one, do the next one. But if you're a cupcake maker, your goal in life may be to have just that one cupcake shop, or do you plan to be a Tiff's Treats and you're going to have, 100 cupcake shots. Like, what does your end goal look like so that you know how to start building the house from the get-go? And know, of course, it'll iterate and change. Your initial idea is never your ending idea. It's never where you end up, and know that too.
Okay. Yeah, big lesson, I guess, for this year, obviously, and going forward. Now that it's you plan, but I don't know, it's this phrase, right, that you say, like, man plans and God laughs, right? So for those that feel that way, it feels very true. So thanks for that, Tina, as well. Awesome. All right. So let's get on to that fourth question we have for you all. And so for Ms. Natalie, once more time, what would you say now are the top 3 skills that you need to be a successful entrepreneur? What comes first?
So I had the fortune of knowing you were going to ask this question. So I wrote that my top 3 were having broad experiences, tribe building. I don't know what the characteristic is for that, but the idea of tribe building and humility. And so as far as broad experiences, again, we talked about this in that first part of the question, but one of the mistakes that I see people make, again, we're in this college town here, and I get these new grads out of grad school, and they're like, I just got out of grad school and I'm the best thing since sliced bread. I'm going to go shake this industry. And I'm like, oh, cool. Tell me about yourself. And it turns out, like, they've never had a job. They've never worked in the industry they plan to disrupt. They have this idea, and occasionally they have an idea and a check, which, at that point, who am I to tell them no? But the broad experience is what's going to get you past convincing daddy to help support your new business, right? So, and really, go know thy enemy. Go know thy friends, go know thy enemy, go know thy other stuff. I mean, I talked about how I worked as a buyer in the death care industry. Well, for a while, I couldn't practice in Texas because I took the bar in Colorado, and I had to come back to Texas, and I had to take the bar again. I fell back on my purchasing career, but I have since then done a handful of purchasing investigations and, had to advise clients about purchasing behaviors. But there's no way. They don't teach that stuff in law school. They just don't. That's real world stuff. They don't teach real world stuff in law school. But I also, I had to take a tax class in law school. And when I found out that not every law school made their kids take tax class, I was livid. But at the end of the day, that class, I cried every Tuesday night and every Thursday night after Professor Yamamoto's class. I cried every night. My husband is an accountant, and he just looked at me like, I don't understand. Just put it in QuickBooks. I'm like, this is not what it is in law school. But I have used the information from those tax classes all the time. Those concepts. Again, if you're a cupcake maker, like, what are the chances that you understand what a capital investment is? Well, you know what? I'm an attorney, and I do, because I took this random class. But I went and I had all these jobs, and I did all these internships, and I got all this stuff, and I thought, it made applying for colleges really sloppy, because I had this long transcript, and I had to go get, proof that I had these jobs every summer, and proof that I had taken these classes at all these universities. But, once that administrative piece was aside, I had all this broad experience. And so when people walk in my door and they say things like, I want to start animal behavioralist organization. Well, you know what? I've got a ton of experience with that, not as a behavioralist, but I've been around it. And I understand the difference between behavioralists and trainers. Like, I knew that before they got there, or when a client calls and says, I have a $1 billion problem in my purchasing department, I can talk the talk and walk the walk. And, people start talking about, well, we've got this problem in our accounting department and we need you to look into it. Well, I'll be the first to tell you that I can't do my 5th graders math, but I can go look at, an accounting issue, because I had to keep books for somebody. It was painful. It was so painful, but I did it, and I know it, and I can talk the talk and ask the questions. And I know enough to, again, reach out to the professionals that are smarter than me when I don't know what's going on. So again, know thy enemy, know thy industry, know thy industry's competitors, and know thy friends, and just get some really broad experience. Be a Renaissance person. I guess that's another way to say that. My next one was tribe building. There's you'll notice there's a whole lot of themes here, but that tribe building, it is go get those professionals, but it's also go get those champions. Tina's a champion of mine, and I hope I am to you too. But Tina's a champion of mine. Who are the people that think you're neat? And part of the reason that this occurred to me at some point was as I realized other baby attorneys were coming up, and I'd be like, oh, that's great. I don't do that kind of law, but I'm happy to pass that on to you because you may be a baby attorney, but I can see how smart you are. I had a lot to do with a handful of people building up their practices. And that was just business I didn't want. I was a fan of this girl in Dallas that did probate law. And I would tell people, no, I don't do probate, but there's this lady in Dallas. Her name is Yana Settle. She's amazing. And I think you should call her, even though she's in Dallas. And, at some point I realized, I'm doing this 5 times a week. That's great money for a new practice. And people who have done that for me over the years, and part of tribe building is not burning bridges. So even that organization that I left, that I told you that I had been sexually assaulted, and I am no longer connected with that guy. But the other people in the organization, I still contact them every once in a while, and I've gotten work from those old connections because those people all still respect me. And so tribe building becomes really important too. And the last one, again, I'm just sort of recognizing the chronic themes between what I'm saying in different questions and what Tina and I are saying in different perspectives. But humility. You want to be the dumbest person in the room. This isn't one of those things. If you're going out on your own, if you're going out to support yourself, if you're going out. I have to at least have a job where I can feed my dog and I can feed my kid. Like I have to at least make that much money, right? So I can't be too stupid, but I also have to acknowledge there are other forces in this world that are gonna influence what I do, and I need somebody to look at my books and Chase Kincannon to tell me yesterday, Natalie, things have changed for you this year. You need to get in touch with, Carly Biddle, your CPA, sooner rather than later this year. You need to do that. I mentioned this before, but one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is saying, oh yeah, no, it's fine. We did LegalZoom to create our entity, but we need you to go do all this other stuff now. And I make a lot of money unzooming people. But it is really hard for me to say, wait, stop, hold on. Do not let these books be your books when you go talk to an investor or when you go approach a bank. They've seen those books before, they know who wrote them, and they're going to laugh at you when they realize that you weren't willing to invest in yourself. Those LegalZoom documents, and it's not just LegalZoom, there's other organizations like that, the ones you stole from your friend or you got from your brother that really have nothing to do with your industry. Investors and bankers, they've seen it all before. They know that stuff. They're gonna know if you didn't invest in yourself. So have the humility to say, I need to invest in myself. Money's tight. What do I need to do to get to a place where you can help me invest in myself, or how can you help me invest in myself with what I have today? But have the humility to do that.
I was going to ask you, Natalie, like as an example, since I know that some students watching right now and for the future use could be high school students. So what does that mean? And what would that look like for a high school 17, 18-year-old that's thinking, I can run a business one day, I can have my family give me their business, and having humility, it's a very vague concept sometimes. What does that look like? How do you gain that? How do you hone that skill? Because to me, that's like a soft skill that you learn over time, right? So it's like,
I don't know if I know a great answer to your question, but I can give you an antidote. I used to work with one of my hardest bosses I ever had. It was my first boss out of law school, and her name was Elizabeth, and she's back in Colorado. And she was just hard. She was just a hard boss. And when we would sit at a table and we would round table our cases, there were times that she would look at us and say, I don't understand. And something about having this person that I knew was one of the smartest people I had ever met in my life sit in front of me and say, I don't understand. Let me know that, hey, I wasn't explaining things very well. But also that, like, holy cow, she's not embarrassed that she doesn't understand. She's not shy about it. She is this brilliant, well-respected woman in the entire Colorado legal community. And she's sitting there saying, I don't understand. There are very few people that I respect as much as this woman who taught me how to say, I don't understand. So I'm not sure that's a great answer to your question, but I hope it's an anecdote about humility.
Exactly that. I think that going back to what you had mentioned also, and I don't know how well known this phrase is, imposter syndrome, Natalie, you mentioned that. Like, that is something that minorities feel, that is something that females feel, like every group and that's part of the reason why this was a thing that I wanted to do, was bring people that have been marginalized, have been underrepresented. I come from a city that was the fact that people don't even realize that's an imposter syndrome. It has a name. It has, it has a definition to it that means like you don't belong where you could be and you should be. You have to build that confidence, humility. So great soft skills, but it does take time to hone those skills and shape that. And I always want high school students to recognize that too, that you are just getting started. You have so much left. So that's a really great skill that you mentioned, and to bring up to the light. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So Tina, would you
It's
like to?
Natalie and I compared notes, and I swear we didn't compare notes before this, but on my list was humility.
You're sharing brains.
Sure. A little bit to the, did you catch that first part? Was it muted? Humility was the first one. And then the second part is kind of to the imposter syndrome. I always call it acting as if. And the quick anecdote that I'll give of that is, my first startup out of the gate was Pets MD. And what I later learned through the process is to act as if you're successful, act as if you're the, I don't know how many kids are on the call, but act as if you're the beep, right? Because only you know you're small. Nobody else knows you're small. Until you tell them that you're a teeny tiny, just started yesterday company, nobody knows that. And so when we started Pets MD, there was a variety of things that we wanted to do, but I knew that we needed a national partner to really go to meet our exit strategy. And so through a variety of means, I managed to pick up the phone and finally get on a phone call. And I'll tell you this story. It's the Sally McCormick story. So as an entrepreneur, you're the CEO of your company, right? You're also the person that takes out the trash, right? You're the everything, because it's maybe you and a couple of other people, maybe a business partner. And so I wanted to go to work and I wanted to partner with PetSmart. And our brand name was great, Pets MD. We had tons of pages of content. PetSmart was really good at selling product, but they didn't have content. I thought it was a great marriage that could happen for us to produce product and content and product together. So I got on the phone and I managed to find the chief marketing officer of PetSmart. And the phone rings and his assistant answers the phone. And at that moment, the light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot be the CEO of the company calling to talking to the assistant to talk to the so-and-so. And so she says, hi, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, my boss would really like to talk to your boss. Can we get a meeting set up? And she's like, great, what's your name? I'm like, Sally. Just pull a name out of the air, Sally. And she says, great, let me get your contact info. What's your last name? And this will tell you where I was. Because I looked around the room and I went, McCormick. So if anybody cooks, McCormick is the spice, it's all over your spice rack. And so I became Sally McCormick in a moment because I was acting as if we were a huge brand that had enough firepower to have an assistant for the CEO to call. And then a few short months later, Sally McCormick closed the deal for me. We were able to then put the CEOs and CMOs on a call together and book an arrangement between PetSmart and Pets MD back in the early days. And then every startup I had after that, I had to, because then I had to go quickly create an email name for Sally McCormick, right? So then every company that I had after that, I always had a Sally.McCormick at whatever the company was, just as, always bringing Sally along with me because we had to act as if we were big in order to have that phone call with PetSmart. They would have never had a phone call with a 2-person shop working out of their kitchen. So act as if it's that imposter syndrome that Natalie was talking about. And then the humility, because you're going to need to ask for all kinds of help. You're also going to need to ask for money. And the first circle that you should go to is yourself and your family and friends. And if they're not willing to invest in you, right? My other hat as an investor was, if you couldn't get that first band of people that love you to give money to you, why am I going to give money to you as an investor? And then ultimately is commitment. We would have entrepreneurs come in when they were asking us to fund their company to sign NDAs. I'm like, that's cute. Did you see that on TV? Because chances are I've heard your idea 50 times as an investor. And if you think your idea is unique, you're out of your mind. It's like somebody else has already thought of your idea. A successful entrepreneur is the one that can actually execute on that idea. It wasn't called WD1, it's called WD-40, right? There are several iterations that happened to get it there, but they finally got it there. So humility, commitment, and act as if. And have a Sally McCormick.
And have a Sally McCormick. I love that story, Tina. That is, it's a great anecdote, because that is, you felt it, Natalie felt it. It's like, it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter how far you've come. It doesn't matter how many resources you had to begin with. You still feel that transparency and what that looks like. Awesome. All righty. Well, that's awesome. I wanted to just give a quick heads up for our audience. We are still in for the last question, and the Q&A is open. So if questions come up, please go ahead and write those in, and we can answer it now, or we can also just follow up with you after the fact. But please go ahead and use that feature. It is open for our audience members. So just wanted to give some quick insight to that. And awesome. So we got that. Let's go on to that final big question that I have for our panelists for today. And really want you to think about this one. We'll have Tina go first. Chance to start your career over again. What would you do differently this time around?
I would buy Apple stock.
Apple stock. You heard it here first.
I would definitely invest better. If I had a chance to start the career over again, what would I do differently? I tell you what, I wouldn't change. I certainly wouldn't change the educational path. I have a degree in accounting, although I did about a year's worth of accounting and never did it again because it's awful. I don't know, because I'm pretty content with the constant iteration. For me, it fits me. And it was honestly, and Natalie's on my board, and so she'll tell you when I interviewed for this current role, they looked at my resume and they're like, "Well, you've done a lot of things every 2 years." Right. But that's an entrepreneur's resume, is we do bounce around and we do a lot of things, because you build it, you sell it, you build it, you sell it. And so for me, it's about being true to who you are. If you're sitting and watching this and you're deciding whether or not you want to go into business for yourself, pull the Band-Aid off, man. Pull the Band-Aid off, because nobody's going to be your best cheerleader besides you. Nobody's going to do it for you. Believe in yourself. I mentioned at the onset of the call, I'm a first gen American. And I look around at my fellow immigrant families, if you will, who have so much more courage than most people that I meet on a daily basis, because here they are as an immigrant coming into the country and immediately setting up a business and going, right? They see the value in investing in themselves and doing it for themselves. And so look around and just know that if other people can do it, you can do it, right? Pull the Band-Aid off. Take some of the lessons learned from this call and get your army together, get your advisory committee together. Probably if I had it to do over again, maybe that's the answer to that is, it took us a while to put together an advisory board. So you have your regular board, but then you need your advisory board, and formalize that. And these are people who are going to kick your ass, right? These are people who are going to tell you that your baby is ugly and your idea is stupid. Don't put a bunch of people that are going to go, "Oh, it's awesome. It's so great. I love your cupcakes." No, you want somebody to be like, "No, man, that frosting is sour," right? And people are going to be honest with you out of the gate is probably really important. So I'd have to Natalie's earlier point, I'd have a bigger tribe that's more formalized, right? These are people that you want to touch base with every quarter and go, here's my list of things that we're doing. Here's the progress we've made. And you want them to come back at you and go, "Dude, you said 4 months ago you were going to do this other thing. Where'd that go?" Right? You want people to hold you accountable because as an entrepreneur, man, you get tossed in so many different directions that it's important that you have people that can keep you on track and focused on your actual goal. Because entrepreneurs will spend the day, right, making sure the cable is done, making sure the trash guy is paid, right? And you put down your list of busy work, and at the end of the day, you're like, man, I'm tired. I did so much. Did you? Did you actually do anything toward your actual real goal, or did you just do busy work? And you need people to keep you honest. So for me, it would be having that advisory group formalized earlier on than I did.
Good insight. Okay. So when it comes to
Tina, I don't know if I can type it in, but now I want to ask Tina a question. Since you struggled with the answer of doing your career over again, Tina, what's your favorite failure?
Oh, I love failure, actually. I give a huge lecture on failure. We thought we did an iteration of a company that we thought was going to be just, the cat's meow. And about 6 months in, and about, I don't know, $200,000 over budget, and a second mortgage on the house. At some point, we had to realize that it was just a loss, and you just got to call a spade a spade. And we made the hard decision to close it down and to take the loss and move on. And some people kind of get, I grew up in Vegas, and they get what we call pot committed, where they just keep throwing good money after bad.
Yeah.
And then you just got to at some point know when it's a dead end, and you got to pull the plug. And so we pulled the plug on that one, knowing that we were never going to be able to recover the time spent, the energy spent, and the money spent on that company. Yeah, don't ever do a magazine company. Yeah, but you just have to take the humility and tell people that, we closed that one. And it's awkward because you go through all the iterations of like, oh, what are you going to say to, when you meet people? Because they always want to know, hey, how's your business doing? And you go, it folded. Right? You have to be okay with that. It goes back to that humility point. You have to be okay with saying, yeah, that one didn't work out, but here's the other thing that we're working on.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you, Natalie, for that question. That's great answers too. It's like you guys know each other or something. It's like y'all know. Yeah, so we definitely want to make sure that the audience knows that you fall, you get back up 20 million times, because that is the storyline that it seems to play out for everyone. And yeah, that's a challenge in itself. So thank you for that. We did have a question come up on our Q&A, but I will table that because I wanted Natalie to go ahead and answer this one, and then we'll get back to their question from Lori that we had. So just to keep in the theme, Natalie, what would you say? What would you change if you had to? And what would you do differently this time around for your business?
If I had to do things differently, I think the one thing that I would have done differently is given more respect to a traditional legal career. And so I talked a lot about having all this broad experience, and I talked a lot about having your tribe. And I think, again, I had to work through law school. I had to work through a lot of my undergrad. There were some things that I couldn't have done it any other way. I couldn't have quit my job and gone to law school. That just wasn't an option for me. But even within that, I kind of just said, oh, well, I guess, all these normal things that you do in law school aren't an option for me. And I wish that I had honored that those normal experiences were important too, because the consequence was I ended up in Austin, and I never worked for a big law firm. And what happens when you go work for big law and do sort of the thing that's expected of you outside of school is all those people become battle buddies. So they get out of law school, they're all the grunts at the big law firms, they all have the hard work together, they lean on each other, they lean on their old classmates, they lean on, tolerating the horrible boss that they both have. They really become battle buddies, and they become close. And I think at this point in my career, like, I'm past it. I have my friends in the network and in the community now too, but I think I didn't give enough credence or respect to having sort of the normal path that most people have out of law school. And it had that, I talked about all the different experiences. That was the one experience I denied myself by trying to kind of keep up with where I thought I had to go. I could have, taken a pay cut and gone back a little bit and had a normal out of law school experience. And I think getting those battle buddies would have been good for me. Because then I had to be, how old was I? I was older. I was a second career student anyway, but I was older. I was in a new town, trying to go network with people, and they already had these 10-year friends. So again, it goes back to having broad experiences, having your tribe, but don't give up on doing it sort of the prescribed way, even for a little bit.
Well, what would you say is the prescribed way? How do you make those battle buddies?
Well, yeah, I mean, in law, you go to law school, you're supposed to go get a horrible job at a big law firm afterwards. I mean, this is what you're supposed to do. And I didn't want to do it. I was a second career student. I'd already been a grunt, and I didn't want to go be a grunt again. And I kind of wish I had done it for a couple of years and just had that big law experience. It would have never been the right path for me, but I wish I had a couple of years of that under my belt so that I could reference it, and I'd have those battle buddies and those network connections. And I'm sure I run my firm different than a big law firm, and it just would be nice to be able to compare those things. So, and there's the same thing for accountants. You go to accounting school, you're supposed to go work for, a big accounting firm for a couple of years. There's other things, you go to a veterinarian, you're supposed to, you get a veterinarian degree, you're supposed to do X for a little bit, work for somebody else for a little bit before you go start your own practice. There's just a lot of professions, a lot of degrees. You're kind of supposed to go do something afterwards. And even if I knew that big law was never for me, that initial experience would have been. I would again. I just wish I had a little bit of it under my belt.
Okay. And did you say what was the main reason why you didn't do that for yourself? Why did you not look for that big firm?
Because I didn't have humility. I was a second career student. So I was older when I went back to law school. And by the time I got out of law school, I was older still. I didn't want to go back to the ground floor again. I didn't want to be the grunt. I didn't want to be the lowest person on the totem pole. I didn't want to have humility and let somebody boss me around. And I should have just done that for a little bit. I should have taken a pay cut and done it.
Yeah, right. We always think what are the what ifs? I mean, honestly, you're happy with your success and you're happy with your business, but you always kind of wonder what if, So it's
sure.
It
just would have been easier to get here.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, good tips for sure. Y'all could be great mentors for students again, knowing that humility. I didn't see that coming as the theme for this series because man, we don't talk about that. I don't talk on a daily basis about humility. You just kind of experience it, and to put a word to it, it's powerful. Definitely.
Good.
I did have. Did you want to add anything, Natalie?
No.
Yeah, I wanted to just pose a question for y'all, and just a little disclaimer, this question is a little bit in the theme of the next panel. So just as a plug for the next panel, it's going to be for resources for small businesses. It's coming up at 11:15. But if y'all are comfortable, I'll pose the question, and just a quick question from Lori that's in our audience. When you apply for a loan for a business, the question is, what do the bank go by to give you a loan? I'm wondering if the question is what does the bank need from you to get a loan for a small business, is how I'm taking the question. Is that something Tina or Natalie want to?
Yeah, Tina's already answered it. The number one, and I know Tina's going to be able to give a more robust answer, but she's already said it. The number one mistake I see people make is, I just quit my job and I'm going to go start this company. And nobody's going to give you money if you don't have a job.
Fair enough.
So don't quit your job. But Tina, I bet you have a little bit more robust, some padding, some scaffolding to put on that answer.
Yeah, it depends kind of what your exit strategy is as a business owner. If you're a short-term business owner, right, you're going to just build the valuation and flip the company, then you don't have time for a traditional bank loan because that's a process and it takes a lot longer. So it depends on your exit strategy. If you're, again, let's use a cupcake example, if that's your business, right, stay employed with whoever's paying your bills right now until they push you out the door and still do your business and your side hustle. Until you get it to the point where they notice that you're not really working as hard for them anymore and they kick you out the door. But then at that point, a bank loans on assets, right? They loan on what do you have. Banks are very rigid in their lending. Look at interest rates, right? Where right now interest rates are fantastic. So this is a good time to start shopping around and shop around, right? Look for different banks, look for different banking relationships. We saw how important that was during the shutdown with the PPP. Those who had good banking relationships were first in line. But look at different options. Like my 5 startups, we never went to a bank. It was just never a thing because we needed to move so quickly. And banks don't typically lend on your big dream. They want to know that you have assets already in play. Are you willing to take out a second mortgage on your house? How much money has already been committed by others? What's your capitalization table look like? Right? All of those kind of bigger questions that take a lot longer to get to. So you go to the bank if you've got those assets ready to go. If you don't, then you go the friends and family route first and get those folks to invest in you. But that's after you've talked to Natalie and set up all your paperwork correctly, wherever she is on my screen here. And what that investment looks like, and what that return looks like for them, what their portion is. And then you start dancing around to the angel funds in town. Again, if you're a startup, traditional startup. If you're brick and mortar, then it's a little bit different avenue. But have those conversations with bankers out of the gate. Say, look, yeah, I'm making the best cupcakes in the world. I've got a small trailer over on South Congress, and I'm ready to go into a brick and mortar place. Because it's important to know what questions they're going to ask and what they need, so that you can then just go, all right, great, give me 6 months, I'll go build all that and I'll come back. Because you're probably not going to have everything that they want to be able to extend the loan. It's like buying a house, right? If you've ever bought a house before, it's a stack of papers this big, but they want to know that you're good for it, right? Banks don't take risks. They do calculated transactions. The probability is super high that they're going to get paid back, and they're going to get paid back first. So it depends on what kind of business you're running, what your exit strategy is, how fast you need the money to churn, and what kind of capital that you already have.
Nice. And
there's
Tina,
other,
you mentioned
other programs out there that you can go grant routes. There's different types of nonprofit routes that you can also talk to, but just know that all of that as a solo entrepreneur or duo takes time and energy to go through.
I wanted to touch upon 2 phrases. Angel funds. What exactly could those look like? Yeah. And just angel funds first. Yep. What is that for the audience?
Yeah, there's the traditional banking route. There's the angel fund, which is either one person or a group of folks that have pooled their money to invest in business opportunities that are typically going to take a higher risk than a bank would. Right? They see the vision. They're typically also going to give you some of their sweat equity, because they're physically invested in it. So if I give you $100,000 into your business, I'm going to kind of probably want to have a small role to play to make sure that I'm mentoring you along as the founder, that I'm giving you a little bit of a free advice, if you will, along the way, to make sure that I make money on the back end of that investment. And then you have super angels that give a little bit more to bigger group. And then your venture capitalists, those are the guys and gals that give you, the millions once you hit the Facebook level. But that point too is every time new investment comes into your company, you lose a piece of your company. So know that too. Yeah. So you might start out as 100% owner of your company. Now you take an angel investor, and I'm going to come in and say, okay, I'm going to give you 100,000, but I value your company at 200, so I get 50% of your company. Right. So just know that more money you take in as an entrepreneur, you lose a portion of your stake in that company, which is good and bad. Right. If I had a 1% stake in Google right now, I'd be plenty happy. But if I have a 1% stake in Tina's Cupcake Factory, probably not. Right. So it kind of depends where your threshold is.
Tina, do you want to talk about SBA and city assistant, the stuff the city supports for brick and mortar organizations?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. The city has an economic development department that has tons of programming and support and assistance. There's other groups like SCORE, and I mean, there's a dozen, and they're all on the city's website of nonprofit resources that can help sit with the entrepreneur and kind of talk through all of these things in a much deeper level that is very micro to that organization, and then kind of point you in the right direction, whether it be, Sheldon even mentioned it in his, I haven't read all of it, but like reentry programs for vets. Yeah, there's different types of opportunities available to small business entrepreneurs besides a traditional bank loan or the dreaded angel VC route. that you can go to that still allows you to take in dollars without relinquishing control or power of your organization. But the city's economic development department and the city's they just changed their name from SMBR to something else. But start there. And that's their whole goal, is to point. In fact, that was the first place that I went to when we started Pets MD, is I went and I met with a city official over small business. And I said, I had this crazy idea. I want to do this. Where do I start looking for money? And they laid out the entire array of options. Oh my gosh, it was like, what year are we in? Oh my God, it's almost 20 years ago. I'm getting old. But that's what they're there for, is they're there to help you start those processes. And so, yeah, make sure you know what the landscape looks like, and then decide what investment model and tool is the best for you.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know that you saw the question that came in, Tina, that I wanted to pose as well for either one of you, Natalie and Tina. So Sheldon asks that when it comes to funding as a startup veteran, so with minimum overhead, would you say that there are advantages to someone just starting up operating to go nonprofit, or for profit with a sliding scale and get scholarships for your students that cannot afford to attend?
I don't know enough about your idea to give you a real answer, so I'm going to talk around it a little bit. Austin and this generation is very social justice minded, and we've come out with the idea of benefit corporations, and this question asks about not-for-profit organizations. And the number one thing that I can say, with like 20 asterisks after it, I know I've said it already, but if you're thinking of starting a not-for-profit, you've got to go get your professionals involved. The taxation and legal standing for not-for-profits is big, and there's even attorneys that'll go start your not-for-profit for $500. And I assure you that the people that buy those services generally don't make it the first year. Starting a not-for-profit, and particularly, Sheldon, if you're talking about some intersection of not-for-profit and for-profit, those tax laws are so intricate. You need a team of accounting, operations, and legal people on your board. Tina's on a chamber, and we have a not-for-profit associated with it. One of the other boards that I actually rolled off of now, but I'm part of Texas Humane Legislative Network, and we have a C3, a C5, and a C4. I think that's right. But each one of those tax identities comes with so many reporting requirements and tax obligations, and you've really got to be sophisticated about how you keep your money separate and how the different parts of the organizations work together. And so I would, suggest that, Sheldon, something that is the intersection of a not-for-profit and a for-profit is probably not what you want to do right out of the gate. Dip your toes in some of the ancillary ideas around it. Like, I'm not saying don't go help vets, but do it for a couple of years and see what I'm talking about this for-profit stuff and the not-for-profit stuff. Because it really does, you can get in a lot of trouble with the IRS if you aren't extremely good at keeping your accounting and your legal entities separate.
Yeah, and if you're trying to get a business loan from a bank, it's going to be much easier as a standard business entity as opposed to a C3.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for those that don't know what a C3 is, that's like the talk for nonprofits versus the for-profit or organization. Tina, is that a good way to describe that?
Yeah, C3 is this when you hear people say C3, C6, C7, C4, those are IRS designations that, to Natalie's point, have the very specific stated purpose and tax implications.
Yeah, a lot of technical jargon that definitely is something that is the business owner's duty and definitely responsibility to learn on. So again, for the business students that are going to be watching this, and for the students that are just learning what a business entails, this is the first step, right, for you all to realize that there are a lot of little nuances to come for you. But yeah, I really appreciate all this time that you've taken, Tina and Natalie, for answering all these questions. We're done with the question, but I wanted to show the last slide for us. We're wrapping up, y'all. I wanted to just give you all the opportunity to have any last remarks for our audience and for the future audience, since we are going to be recording this and uploading this to our Workforce Solutions YouTube channel after the fact for distribution across our cities, and for the help, for the future help for prospective business owners. So I just turn the mic over to you all for the last remarks.
Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, do it.
Um,
I mean, if you're going to look back on your life when you hit my age and beyond and go, man, I should have done it. And the example I always give is back when I was 20, in my 20s, I used to, kind of self body shame and think, oh, I can't possibly wear a bikini and go out and by the beach. And now I look back and go, damn, I was hot, right? Do it while you can do it, because it's not going to get any easier as you get older.
Yeah. I guess along those lines, there's a balance you have to find between, acting like, adulting, and acknowledging that this is really who you are on the inside. And, just thinking back, one of my other regrets was, I wish I didn't have a mortgage when I went back to law school. Like, I wish I hadn't ever stopped living like a student when I went back to law school. But it's the same thing. Like, if you're thinking about starting your own business, don't stop living scrappy, because once you got a mortgage, you can't stop paying that. But once you're in an apartment, you can go to a cheaper apartment. Don't get 10 dogs if you can only afford one as an entrepreneur. Don't buy a Lamborghini if, your entrepreneur life only needs a Fiesta. If you got that entrepreneurial itch, don't start strapping yourself down with obligations, because it just makes it harder. Do it now. Do it when you can do it. Be super smart about it. Whatever our themes, have humility, build your tribe, get your professionals, but do it before things in life gets complicated.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. And confidence above all, right, Tina?
Yeah, with a dose of humility.
I know, right? They're kind of like, we're talking opposites, but not really. Not really. You can have both.
Not really.
Confidence is key for sure. And I'll always reiterate that no matter who I'm talking with, because yes, it takes time. So yeah, that's it for us today. Natalie, again, Tina, thank you again for the support. This has been What is Entrepreneurship, the benefits and challenges of running your own business. And this is one of 4 panels today, so I'm really excited. We're getting ready for the next one. So if you want to tune in to the next one, you can definitely go ahead and do so. We're going to be uploading these recordings. And again, thank you so much, ladies, for your time and effort on this. And congratulations on all your successes, and looking forward to the future for you all. And thank you so much, everyone. With that, we're good.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye, Tina. Bye, Natalie.